Hello, motherfucker. It's Kazuma Kiryu, and I'm here to beat up punks and eat ass. And the punks are already dead.
Okay, look, I'm not saying that the English dub of Yakuza 1 is exactly like that, but it ain't not like that neither, is it?
Fuck you! What a little pussy. Hey, fuck this place up! Let's rip this motherfucker down!
It's just so much more macho and full of swearing and not quite in line tonally with how it'd be in Japanese. Or is it?
Oi! Nisagoto butsuruze!
Well, let's just say that Yakuza 1 is defo the first ass game in the series. The moment 2 dropped, shit matured a lot and got jazzy and smooth and more emotional, whereas the first title is more of a crime drama with the violence and the anger and the yelling and the shooting. Not that none of those elements aren't present in the games 2 onward, hell no, but it's defo more about it, you know? So, I can get why in localization they went with a,
What the fuck you think you're doing?
Today's been a very bad day, and it's put me in a real shitty mood.
Reservoir Dogsy, action hanky, mafioso, motherfucker, asshole type of tone.
Still, I'm confused. What was all that about Yumi and the 10 billion yen?
Though, on the real, Date-san sounding like Sam is pretty fucking funny. Hey there, Kazuma, little buddy. In either case, as odd as the PS2 version is to play now, quite a fair few hardcore longtime Yakuza fans do not approve of the Kiwami remakes of the first 2 games. You'd think that you'd want to make the series more accessible and that you want it to do well so that more games can be made and more folks can share in the thing that you love, but as someone who is also a long-term Yakuza fan and a critic of remakeage, I can't see how there's more to it than some simple petty fanboyisms. I mean, what if the remakes ain't faithful? What if they ruined what made those 2 games as initially loved as they were? Not to mention that a big part of the series is the growth that you experience, how locations, buildings, characters, side or main, and the gameplay change and evolve, and how it rewards you for sticking with it by constantly calling back to old shit in fun and clever ways. Maybe you won't get that from playing somewhat hastily made remakes that crimp a bunch of shit from the newer games. On the other hand, what if you don't care and just want to get into the series? Maybe you played 0 and don't want to get booted back to the stanky PS2 realm of low resolutions, dusty cables, or finicky emulation. Would the Kiwamis be suited for that? As replacements, basically? Well, in this video, I ask these questions. In fact, I just did. Will I answer them too? Maybe. There's a lot regarding this game that can be patched up for sure. The shitty loading screens before combat, the shitty combat, the loading screens during camera transitions, that make movement feel fucky all around town, the English dub, which, has its moments, but is now grossly inconsistent with the rest of the series, nor is it true to the tone and quality of the Japanese voice acting, and also the side content is thin. Good game for what it was at the time, but contrasted to where the series would go, it falls drastically behind. Like, yeah, sure, you can do the crane games, hit the nightclubs, smack balls at the batting center, and visit all of the lovingly rendered little bars and restaurants, but most side quests are just like, hey, you there, big guy, some creepo is following me around, please tell him to get lost. And then you tell him to get lost, and then a fight happens, and then you get money. Some are more elaborate, like this one here, where this dude read my palm, took me to a cafe with his muscle, and tried to threaten me into buying a stupid good luck charm. After which, Kazuma, of course, beat his ass with a giant traffic cone. But you won't be finding any Biza or dodge slipping men's trying to deliver some food on a plate here. Still, that doesn't mean that it don't have its perks neither. It's pretty well paced for one. From 4 onward, the game started getting longer and longer, and while it is in no way bad, there's certainly stuff to be stuffed about a tighter paced, more concise story where you don't have like 12 villains and 6 new friendly characters who all need to dramatically die just to set up those 12 villains. Sometimes you just want one villain, who in this case is your boy Nishiki turned not your boy Nishiki because he got power hungry. Not exactly emotionally gripping, but hey, it works. Also, otherwise, the dark, grim color palette that shows Kamurocho in almost permanent nighttime and the cool framing with the angles, the gloomy lighting, those soft PS2 transparencies, and just how cramped and oppressive Kamurocho felt, how tight the alleyways were, and how deeply you felt the scale of it all and the smallness of your Eunice as a result of the high-flying, looming viewpoints. These is, of course, products of these locales not needing to accommodate a 360 twistable camera. It's dark, claustrophobic, tight, moody, and noirish to a T, which isn't something any of the games post-2 did. Well, except for Zero. Which is why it's a good thing then that that's the game that the remake would be built upon. I mean, shit's colorful now. All the signs pop and glow, the colors and saturation are fucking mint. It's not as moody as the original at all, but the trash defo puts the grime back into it, and I just fucking love how this looks, honestly. That diorama skill shit, I guess, is missing, but not necessarily for the worse. See, bigness can look down on you, but you can also look up at bigness and get roughly the same vibe. Or, the vibe is more Zero than it'll ever be one, but as I said, Zero has that darkness, that crampedness, that crowdedness, and that trashness. If this was running on any of the prior entries' engines, be it 3 or 4 or even 5's iteration of it, I don't think it would have looked like 1 even a little bit. As those games had far softer, more muted lighting that made for a more cleaner look and tended to favor wider, less cluttered streets and daylight. Good for those games, don't get me wrong, but Zero is certainly the best choice for conveying one's vibe with more detail than one itself ever could. Besides, even if the camera sometimes gets a bit fuck in more narrow areas, giving me mad Dead Souls flashbacks, it's never as annoying as the laggy screen transitions would be, even at the best of times. So I don't think it's worth pussyfooting around the bush here. Yakuza 1's combat kinda sucks. It's really slow and stiff, and there's no lock on, and it's easy to go off hitting nothing, and cancelling out of moves is a no-go, so off Kazuma go. It's really not great. In an effort to make up for it, the feel is fucking strong. As low heat moves as there are here comparatively, which do also get repetitive, these fuckers hit right the fuck home. Even the base combos, and not to mention the weapons, Kiryu's is a goddamn sledgehammer. It can be fun, you know, when it actually works, which sadly isn't enough. As he charges rather slowly and enemies with ranged weapons who more or less just lock and hit scan your ass or anyone who dodges fast are beyond fucking frustrating to deal with due to the prior mentioned offgoing. And surprisingly, the combat in Kiwami starts off pretty faithful to this, with a more or less one-to-one recreation of how Kiryu fought. The high kicks, the uppercuts, the face smashes, it's all there, and better because you don't go off hitting the air stuck in combos this time. It pretty much fixes the flaws while still retaining what made it decent. However, after the first chapter, you'll unlock the Zero styles as Kazuma actually forgets his one shit. 10 years in prison did not do him well, and thus he turns back to his more bat-like, scrappier Zero days. Just slower and less wild, but defo no Dragon of Dojima yet either. And this is where Majima comes into play. I'll talk about the plot and tonal implications of this later, but Kiwami has a system called Majima Everywhere, which, well, means that Majima can pop up everywhere. Hiding in cars, traffic cones, around corners, coming at you while you're ordering food, while you're fighting other dudes. He's a hostess, a cop, a scripper, a taxi driver. He's everywhere. And while you can upgrade the Zero styles normally, the Dragon style can only be regained bit by beating up the Majimeister.
The Bouncer!
And I really don't want to understate how much this and the styles add to the combat overall. Previously horridly unfun and frustrating fights in tiny areas with tons of shit in them become playgrounds of pain when using beast mode as Kiryu thrashes about wielding the furniture as weaponry. The regular Zero style is also still great and has loads of varied heat moves that take away the repetition of face slamming every fucker. And reconstructing the dragon style was surprisingly fun, really letting me appreciate it more for how simple yet hard-hitting it be. Even having you learn some shit for it by training under Komachi instead of just Majima. Dude was a pretty big deal in Zero in Majima's story, and was also present in the original where he was pretty easily ignored. So I dig how they both thematically and mechanically used him here. I did expect the balance to be off a bit due to all of the changes, but it's actually fine. I mean, you're still kind of slow for the most part when compared to Zero, and it also takes a legit while for you to learn future game moves, which sadly does mean that those cunty boss fights against fast dodgy hit scanny dudes are still pretty fucking cunty, but with the rush mode one can catch up to them in a much more intuitive feeling way too. In short, the combat is genuinely good now, without it shitting all over what made the originals decent, fulfilling its potential and doing new shit all at the same time. The only real downside to it for me was that the Majima system relies partially on RNG. Thing is that you need certain types of Majima encounters to unlock very crucial abilities like being able to do heat moves in dragon form. By the end of the game, I had maxed out all of my skill tree thingies, but was unable to spawn Slugger Majima a second time, and so Dragon mode remained heatless for my entire playthrough, essentially rendering it useless against all but the basic bitch boy jobber enemies. And believe you me, motherfucker, I tried. I went far with the Majima shit, but the RNG gods just wouldn't generate my desired number. Not the biggest deal for me, honestly, but for just this once I'll throw the completion nerds a bone and say that this probably ain't too great for said bones. Especially with how, despite writing tons of unique and great dialogue for the more scripted encounters, the more normie random ones do not have that and will go on to feel repetitive later into the game. But it's pretty high effort as is, so I can't really fault them for it too much. Now, in terms of side quests, they actually added a fuck ton, improving on the good stuff that was already there, like the one where you go drinking with boobs but get drugged, and naturally a lot carries over from Zero as well. The mini-games and activities primarily, but also the general look, feel, and presentation of the sub-stories, adding cute little tunes and dynamic camera angles and very comedic writing. For instance, I think Yakuza 1 really only had one actual quest line that spanned the whole game, being these dudes who you bump into literally. Homie acts hurted, his bubbies go all like, yo, you better pay up for hurting the bro, which is then followed up by Kiryu beating the shit out of them. You could do this every chapter or so, with things escalating more every time in ways that I will not spoil. It was neat, it was fun, but ultimately also a bit forgettable. Could've really done with some pizzazz, you know? Some better writing with more personality, some close-ups, some wacky go-fucky music. And luckily, that's exactly what Kiwami adds. Now it's like a whole thing that's in line with the things of the later games in the series. Additionally, they also added in some quest lines calling back to Zero, like the pocket racing station being present. Shit like that is exactly the type of rewarding players for playing all the games type shit that folks like me have been getting out of this series for years that now this game can give to those who've only played Zero. As weird as it may sound, I feel like that alone gives it an edge over the original. Especially because I know that this questline gets brought up again in 6. The Zero people will feel what makes this series so special as a whole work, and the original Yakuza 1 could not have given them that. Plus, being able to walk without the screen freezing every 5 steps and your trajectory going fuck because of the angles is nice, and incentivizes the player to actually want to do side stuff in the first place. In the original, I went from Bacchus post Tojo Dojo to Serena back to Bacchus, and in Kiwami 1, I went from Bacchus to about 3 hours of uninterrupted adventuring and fooling around to Serena to Bacchus. No way in hell I could have done that in the first game, let alone would I have wanted to. Shit's generally a really big improvement. While it's true that all other games in the series do what one do better than it, I do think it's worth remembering that it did it first. It laid the strongest fuck foundations upon which the series is still built, and far smaller franchises have had their foundations crack and crash with far fewer iterations, which stands as a big testament to how good they truly are. How cool the dark, dingy atmosphere of Kamurocho is, how much fun the perfect balance between balls out stupid and hardcore emotional drama is, how creative ideas like Purgatory are, i.e. this whole hobo world accessed through a toilet leading to a park, leading to a sex dungeon, leading to an underground information network, leading to a fight club. How smart of an idea it was to make the RPG town the RPG and to flesh it out using mini-games and tons of side characters and quests, all contributing towards the greater character that is the town itself. And even how cool the combat is with the heat system rewarding playing good with letting you play better. Not to mention the great-ass audioscape of its custom-made city sounds, and the cool labyrinthian layout of Kamurocho that speaks as much to the imagination as ideas like Purgatory do, or the loving detail in which all of its cozy little interiors are rendered, and last, but far from fucking least, the lovable log that is Kazuma Kiryu, easily being one of the bestest, most beloved, well-roundest video gamist characters out there, are all things that started right here. Sure, again, 4 does the Purgatory shit better, 0 had better dinge and fun fuckery, 5 has scope for days, and all of them have a better cast, and 2 has the perfect villain, and so on and so forth. They're all better games, but they could never be if it wasn't for the OG. So put some goddamn respect on its name, bitch. Though, Kiwami is definitely better. Just right out of the gate, the game has so much more presence. Many more text boxes is voiced. The side characters are more like main characters, and not in the sense that their importance is altered, but more so in how they're presented, having voices and little name cards and shit. Also, there's a fair few extra cutscenes and wholly redone bits that look great. Although, just as well, there are many scenes in which they took the original rigging wholesale. New models, textures, engines, and assets, but the exact same animations and camera angles, which, while these look great on PS2, defo stick out a fair amount now given the higher grade models suddenly articulating like animatronic fuck puppets. And don't get me wrong, Kiryu is cute as all hell here. Just look at the splash card. Fucking adorable boy. But I'm not sure I'd put him on cum dispenser tier, you know? And other than that, the game looks and sounds great. The copy-paste cutscenes are at least faithful, which I'd mark up as good, and as much as Kiwami preserves, it also adds and improves. Shinji, for example, has a lot more going on than just being the tutorial bitch turned shooter coat, and Majima, well, to the folks who'd only play 0, he would seem pretty non-important in the original. He's just kind of there in a chaotic neutral sort of way that's barely even neutral. A real wild card who only later in 2 and onward reveals himself to be the homie. One with a lot of duality and uncertainty surrounding him, yes, but in Yakuza 1, that's also really the only aspect that you get. And so now they bring in the 0 baggage, having him say right away to Kiryu that his optimism won't last as life will beat it out of him. A bit on the nose, perhaps, but it makes a lot of sense given his past and moreover gives him the motivation to do the everywhere. He wants to see Kiryu's resolve, you see, either expecting him to break or wanting to see him succeed, which is that dual certainty showing, but also, most of all, just wanting a good fight. Which lines up well with how he be in the later games too. As in 2, he challenges the man to an arena fight, and in 3, one of the first things he does is fight Kiryu talking about how he needs it and shit. It's on brand as fuck and quite cleverly integrated regarding the series as a whole. But not quite so much for Kiwami on its own. You see, I don't think that in Yakuza 1 they were all too sure what they really wanted Majima to be, as he's really not a good guy here, sadistically beating up his mens to near death multiple times or even kidnapping people, having his goons shoot Agent Date even, not really at all what I'd see the Majima from later games do, and certainly not what the one from 0 would do. Like I said, he's a consistent character only from 2 onward. And what sucks is that due to the cutscene copy-pasting, many of the more sadistic asshole Majima scenes remain untouched. So one moment he's violently killing a dude, and in the next he goes on handle a funny date with Kiryu. It's quite a bit of tonal whiplash, which says a lot considering how this series usually is. Thing is that this is bad tonal whiplash, as it makes his character seem inconsistent and ill-considered. To be fair, the new bits do portray him quite well. You learn a lot about him and what he's like now and how he's been dealing with life since what happened to him in Zero. It's pretty good, showing him as a crazy wild motherfucker with a heart of gold, much like how he'd be in 2. Yeah, like that. Someone who really needed a bit of a touch-up though is Nishiki. He's your buddy in Zero and the villain in 1, only in 1 you never really got that great of an impression how much of your buddy he really was, nor did I ever really understand quite why he became evil. Not that the plot was bad at all, the mystery that spawned from it certainly was cool, but it's more crime drama-y and less drama-y. I never felt much emotion, which ain't at all in line with the later games and certainly not with Zero. So now they attempt to rectify that by having you spend a bit more time in the past and giving Nishiki some build-up scenes throughout. Instead of Kiryu going to jail almost right away after one wee hangout at bar, Kiwami has you buy a ring for his GF, as you can already very subtly tell that Nishiki kinda gel, wanting her to be his GF. Zero gave us the homie, and Kiwami gives us the salt, truly displaying time and time again how he's lived in Kiryu's shadow. You see him becoming an emotional wreck post-shooting, becoming a wife-beater. You catch him getting bullied by his underlings, belittled and put in place by his peers, given pity advantages by his bosses, being compared to Kiryu constantly. You see him crying, groveling, getting mad, essentially very effectively, relatably, and slowly building up how he went from bestie to an out-and-out broken bitch. Not at all changing his motivation or making it more complex, but just like actually establishing it by showing stuff, which the original did not do at all, making him seem more basic. So these is good additions for real.
まあ、とにかくしっかりやってくれ。
Anyway, yeah, the story was simple yet well-paced and not as convoluted as the later ones. And this is not maintained whatsoever in Kiwami, as it's longer, has more going on, and has the same "wait, what was I doing again? Oh, I just spent 3 hours at the claw machine" that the title supposed to would do too, but in that, it's also a better introduction to the series and or a follow-up to Zero because of its consistency with the series as a whole, making it less of a first, but still most definitely the first. So a pretty successful remake, I'd say. Sadly, going from Zero to Kiwami to Yakuza 2 would be pretty rough. Don't get me wrong, 2 fixes a lot of 1's old isms. I mean, the combat is faster and the combat is faster, but it certainly ain't no Zero. No, what 2 would truly improve upon is skill, storytelling, and presentation. You know, it's pretty fucking 1 out of 100 that during this exact same conversation, some dudes start bouncing into us again after the same thing happened 5 years ago in my original Yakuza 2 video. Warms my cockles, it does. Letting him go this time though. Carry on, my wayward son. Even better is that just only a few minutes later, Kaoru starts pulling the same shit while saving Hobo Man. And then I got lost at the slot machine for a solid 2 hours. However, in Kiwami 2, this did not happen. In fact, the scenes all played out smoothly. And while saving Hobo Man is possible, I had done so earlier. And to my knowledge, there are no slot machines in this version, which is kind of a sad loss of integrity and intent there. Really?
Oi.
Though, I guess to make up for it, Koru that gets stuck on a railing only a few hours later. So, I guess it all worked out in the end. That's right, motherfuckers. It's Yakuza 2! The stylish, smoother, all-round better playing classic tier sequel. I mean, just look at how the goddamn thing starts. The music, the framing, the voice recording quality, all aces.
あれからもう20年以上経つのか。
내가 죽어도 조직은 그대로야. 동감해!
Yakuza 1 never had anything that stylish. Same goes for the improved lighting. It's got the bloom and the angles, sure, but these here light boxes are so much brighter. With the lens flare effects and the newly added foggy rain moistening the place up proper, shit looks fucking great in Kamurocho alone, but it is in its two brand new areas where this shit properly shines. The glossy, jazzy, rowdy nightclub, party time heavy Sotembori, and the dense, marketplace-laden big billboard swinging Shineichio. The latter actually being one of my favorite locales in the series overall. I just love how dense and compact it is, yet due to the camera framing up towards the tower in the sky and all the white-blue tiles and the classic cozy wooden houses, it seems far more open, airy, old, and lower key than the other two districts do. On the real, it's really just one big shopping street, a square and some alleyways, but that difference alone gives it a very distinct personality. This feels more like a place where you can casually go shopping at all the little mall markets, rather than a rowdy, rough and tumble district to go and get drunk in. Encounters are also slower down here too, as this part of the game features you tracking down some mighty, mysterious info dude, turning it into more of an adventure game. So it's a nice looking place with a strong atmosphere that fits in perfectly with the game's pacing, as a nice breath of fresh, puzzly air, within a game that wasn't even really getting old anyway. And of course, they fucking cut it from the remake. The events of it still happen, but they happen within Sotembori. Got that epic build-up like they're about to head off somewhere on adventure, only for the game to cut to the exact same street that they were already on. Granted, they do ratchet up the puzzliness of it. You have to do this whole save code puzzle where you need to suss out the numbers by checking these shogi pieces in the right order, but I don't know, this ain't setting a great precedent. What gets me too is that given that Kiwami 2 runs in the 6 engine, they totes could have crimped hella Onomichi assets to make it work. It has the rural vibes, the nearly identical rooftop shopping streets, the wooden houses, the shrines. It has the similar tiles. They could have done it, but they didn't, and that makes me sad. To be fair, game dev is hard and expensive and lengthy, and they clearly wanted this to be a quickly made type of thing, but man, Yakuza 2 deserves time dedicated to it. I get that there could have been any number of reasons why they technically couldn't implement this area, but sometimes when you can't, it's time to just don't. Cause, I mean, that cool-ass cutscene directing was the first thing I noticed in Yakuza 2. The first thing I noticed in Kiwami 2 was that the dude in it looked completely different. Cutscene rigging still wholly copy-pasted, of course, which looked a bit off in the Zero engine, but is pretty fucking jarring in the far higher fidelity 6 one. Not to mention that they didn't re-record all lines, so you go from cripsy new audio to lower bitrate PS2 audio for most of the game. And unlike Kiwami 1, they did not record buttloads of new voice acting for the previously unvoiced but important bits. And man, look at this cool, beautiful scene right here, with a unique area made specifically for it to enhance that cinematic atmosphere. Which, of course, ain't there in Kiwami 2 neither. Sure, the dialogue still exists, they reused the OG files, so why wouldn't it? But it now takes place on top of the rooftop topping Serena and Sky Finance. It's minor, absolutely, almost negligible to many, maybe, but I still see it as a downgrade in regards to its presentation and the thematic, stylistic, and tonal nature and integrity thereof. Because, like, why does this dude look different? And why is this guy old now? I could research, but that effort currently wouldn't be in the spirit of things, I think. Dang, wait till he meets the bean shirt man from Disaster Report 4. Anyway, while I joked earlier about the combat just being faster, it did genuinely improve a lot into, well, the gameplay in general does. Fighting is quick as fuck now for one, as Kazuma subtly latches onto people, giving you a mild lock on, and you can even switch directions mid-combo and even break out of set combos. It's pretty good. Which, along with the new moves, makes the combat quite a lot of fun. The camera transitions are a bit quicker too, which is also cool, though walking can still be a bit iffy, admittedly. And going into battles actually doesn't take a fucking week, as it's now nothing but a Wii loading screen. Also, bruh, this is the game where the side quests started to become actual real shit. There's still many one-style ones, certainly, that serve more like little distractions in which some dude is harassing a random dude, and so you're like, hey, dude, and then you smash his face into a dude. But you also start getting shit like the now legendary man-baby one, or the one with this fake Kiryu, and of course you can gain access to the hobo building, or you can do some gambling and meet all kinds of wacky, weird characters. This shit's good. Not quite on the level of where we'd be 3 and 4 onward, but man, dang ass dang, this is still some cool, memorable stuff. With fully voiced and animated cutscenes and wholly unique locations and far more effort than the vast majority of other games of this era would dare to be putting into their side content. Overall, Yakuza 2 uses its spaces very well. I mentioned the Adventure Zone, but there's so many little one-off locales and varied interiors and little areas made just for cutscenes, side quests, and other specific story moments. Transformer rooms, construction sites, empty buildings, a cool samurai castle that appears from the ground, the sleek as fuck Omi base, and goddamn trains. There's a lot of unique areas with unique assets and textures that would make remaking it a bit more of a higher effort thing. They simply can't drag and drop and patch up most of Zero's map for 2. No less because this was, again, made in 6's engine, for which it didn't even have a version of Sotembori what they could reuse. Unlike the Zero engine, 6's fared much better with daytime graphics, and where 2 had its fair share of that, especially with the off-moody cloud layers soon producing that noir rain, it defo shined more at night. And so they had to tweak the contrasts and lighting settings a smidge, but by fucking god does it look great. I spent hours just looking around in first person, admiring every single building and storefront. K2 looks absolutely stunning during play. The slight graininess and filth layers give it a filmic look, and all of the different lights and reflections, the bits of smoke popping up out of pipes, the way the light flares up, it's all very animated and detailed and beautiful in a way that the original or even the Zero engine couldn't even hope to be. However, if Yakuza 2 was known for any weather type, it'd be rain. It rained during cutscenes, during combat, during exploration. It always had that sweet, moody, comfy, jazzy rain. And in Kiwami 2, it never really rains. Hell, there's barely any overcast, or dusk, or fog. Kamurocho does have a wet look about it from time to time, and it's always moody as fuck at Tojo HQ, but really only at Tojo HQ, as there is no rain outside of cutscenes. This game is as bright, colorful, and non-moody as Yakuza 6 was, even at its saddest moments. And I don't think that this bright, open, airy version of Sotembori is at all like the originals, but it's still very much a vibe on its own. Canals, got boat taxis, there's cute little brick-tiled restaurants and terraces, there's marbled up fancy buildings and big, bold, beautiful skies, and water that could have had some extra work done, but still has a vibe that makes the town feel a lot more seasidey. Less crowded, stuffy, jazzy noir land, and more calm walk along the canals on a beautiful summer day. Which, given that the game takes place around Christmas and that the NPCs still mention how gross the air is a bit very fucking discordant, to say the very fucking least. But I'd be lying if I said that I didn't love walking here. Sadly, it does commit a crime. Thing is that there's this one scene, an iconic one even, Kazuma smonking in the rain. And aside from like this game having no rain prior, they also changed the tone of this scene drastically. Cause in the original, it had this classy Sotembori jazz song. Shit was fucking perfect, but in Kiwami 2, they got some fucking Twinkie-ass, gacked-sounding-ass, Vincent Valentier-ass emo bitch rock, which actually pissed me off a little bit. Like, fuck off. Scene ruined. Eat my ass, Kiwami 2. Overall, Kiwami 2 just feels like a much lower effort affair than Kiwami 1 did. Many of the new additions are simply things that 6 or Judgment had. A lot of the sounds and songs are ripped from 0, and a lot of what made 2 got haphazardly crowbarred out. Which really makes a boy wonder, what could they possibly have added to make it feel less like a drag and drop job of assets from all of these various games? Well, for one, again, they did have to build Sotembori from scratch, I think. The 6 engine works very differently from 0's, so while they probably could reuse some assets from its version of the area, very large parts of it wouldn't hold up the first-person scrutiny or be as suitable for the open, free, loading screenless nature of the engine. So I take it that a lot of effort went into it, as it looks fucking great and is pretty much one-to-one size-wise. Although, this texture straight up looks like it came from the PS2 version. Or as I can tell, it's the only one that's like that, so it's really weird, but also kind of funny in a cute way. In any case, the devs probably knew as well as you or I that this version is going to last them about a decade's worth of incrementalism, so it's not like that effort was made specifically for this game, as we already know it's in Yakuza 7, but it's still pretty cool. Another thing that was added is side quests. 0-style side quests, meaning that they won't be voiced as they were in 6, but will still have plenty of meat to them, and cute, memorable little tunes and comic relief and characters, which works very well in tandem with the first-person exploring. Something about strutting into a convenience store, browsing the aisles like a person, asking the person behind the counter in first person, expecting to get the regular shop menu, only to realize that they are a person with personal issues that they'll lay before your person. Shit's really fucking grounded and cool and personable, and a great combination of 6, 0, and 2 that's unique to this blend of games, and before you know it, you're getting topless photos taken by a buff bald dude in a tiny thong, managing a hostess bar and voice acting hentai. Shit's really grounded, cool, and personable.
Boy.
What they also expanded upon is enterable interiors. In Kamurocho alone, there's a few new places, though I'm pretty sure these are all holdovers from Judgment. I say pretty sure because I haven't played it myself yet, but I did ask around and word on the street is that they copy. However, they extended that standard to Sotembori 2. Little staircases, apartment complexes, rooftops, scabby little restaurants, dingy basement gambling parlors, fucking creepy alleyways, and many, many more. Shit's super fun to explore and reminds me a lot of how Yakuza 4 added basement levels and rooftops to its map. Which then brings me to the usage of space, what I mentioned the original doing earlier. Sure, they may have cut a whole fucking district, but the train rides, the car drives, the cutscene interiors, the Omi HQ, and many more of the one-off locales that Defo would have required work to make are all present in Kiwami 2. Shit's great, because they're a big part of why Yakuza 2 felt so big and grounded. Like a classy, high-effort game. And sure, you might not care, but having two characters say we are going to this place and then cutting or fading to them being there, or them saying that and then seeing a sequence of them going there on, say, a train, there's a lot to convey scale, distance, time flow, and a sense of place that you can latch onto. Shit's important for creating a scene, a world, and a story, and Yakuza 2, as its sexy directing also showed, understood that very well. So it's great to see that maintained here, especially with all of the newly fleshed out side quests taking place within these spaces. Just as I did in Zero, I spent hours doing fuck shit. I arrive in Kamurocho and discover this whole damn building I can explore with a network of alleyways behind it and a funky little office in it. Then I get roped into a job interview, find some new pants for this dude who shat himself. Hit the fast guy, find the scam artist Kiryu imposter again, do the baby thing, get some shady dude's number, open his mysterious locker, explore a random backstreet, and find this dude who was a weapon seller in Dead Souls 3, 4, and 5. Now here after not making an appearance in 0 or 6 as a seller of sleazy DVDs. And like, some of these things were there into... Hell, some of these things were there in 6 and Judgment, but it's in how they're combined here in this satisfyingly linked together whole that makes them so much fun to mess around with. Things like the baby quest, for instance, are less like a fun little one-off and more like they're part of a cohesive whole of sub-stories, all interlocking with mini-mechanics fueled by its exploration and progression systems. 2, just like 1, doesn't really make me want to explore, I guess is the key difference here, and Kiwami 2 most certainly do. Now, because Majima memes, 0 and Yakuza 6, they took its weird little tactics minigame and fused it with Majima's construction antics to make for this really lavishly decked out construction site warfare tower defense game. It's one of those things that needs a whole 14 pages of overwhelming tutorial text, but it works pretty much like how one would expect. And of course, it also has its own whole story with these crazy over-the-top evil construction bosses and all kinds of drama and shit. It's about as dumb yet fun as that whole billionaire's real estate thing was in 0. It's quite neat. And finally, the real big new addition is this whole side mode where you play as, of course, Majima. It's detached from the main game, selectable from title screen, and doubles as its own mini Yakuza game with cutscenes and a surprising amount of effort for what it is. Shit takes place in between Yakuza 1 and 2 and shows how everything fell apart and how Majima ended up a Constructo Man. It's all stuff that you really already knew from both 1 and 2, but this just shows it with more detail and drama and makes it playable and also gives fans of 0 a bit of fan service just as well. And as always, Majima is tons of fun to play. With his base moveset combining bits and bobs from all his distinct styles of 0, using weapons, breakdancing, and the iconic moves he do to you during his boss fights, all accompanied by blazing speeds, crazy yelps, and a mad kinetic energy. Though, while all of this is pretty cool, I don't want to oversell it either. As it's very short, doesn't have much in the way of side content except for some buff dudes that you can fight, and Majima doesn't even have his own progression system. It's not exactly reaching the full potential of a Majima side story, I feel. Like, I mean, the plot is just kinda meh. Given the side quests, I know that these folks can write very funny and engaging short stories, but this one's all like, oops, I'm being framed for murder by this one guy who drove me off 20 minutes ago, but oh no, he's in Sotembori now and all the clues point towards this massage parlor. I suppose I could praise it for being free and not DLC, but maybe it being $20 would have ensured ensured it at least being a bit more than what it is now. Though still, it's not a bad addition. I did dig it. Also, in my Yakuza 5 review, I mentioned this. It's fitting too, given that in 2, there was a side quest that took place here involving a talent agency boss man already seeing the potential in Haruka as a pop idol. And look, here it is. I wasn't crazy. It's even there in Kiwami 2, 1-to-1. Because they copy-pasted the whole thing over, more or less. Surprisingly, it doesn't straight up use 6's battle system though. It has the physics and the heavy yet quick great feel of it, but you don't have the heat mode and instead just have a heat bar with the olden contextuals as it was. And even Kiryu's moveset, while flashier, is at its core very similar, with the 3 to 4 punches followed up by uppercut or 2 and sweeping kicks thing. So, jank physics aside, it's honestly pretty faithful, all things considered. But what it does crimp from 6 is its progression system, in which side quests, eating out, exploring, and doing minigames all add meaningful, note, not negligible amounts of experience to your range of categories that you can then exchange for anything from new heat moves and stronger punches to the ability to run longer or get drunk with the lads. It's as great as it was in 6, if not even a little better due to this ultimately being a meteor game. And hey, you even learn Extreme Heat, aka Heat Mode from Komaki later, which brings back a lot of the satisfying Beast-style Zero-esque things like Kiryu auto-picking up bicycles while beating dudes. Also works better here than it did in 6, as an addition to the regular heat bar than as a replacement. Plus, you can do this shit. So, originally I had written this whole bit about how amazing Yakuza 2's story is and how it's easily one of the best straight-up stories with no bloat or bullshit that the series had due to its excellent villain, but Kiwami 2 copy-pastes so much in the way of cutscenes that the plot is preserved wholesale, with no real notable additions or differences, which is good because it didn't really need any. So, instead, I'll talk about something else no one but me will give even the remotest of fucks about, i.e. the maps. Because, you see, in the games 3 and onward, the map of Kamurocho changed a bit. Mainly this little dinky here in the bottom half, thus taking away the big long straight ahead road, and a similar dinky more or less right above it to the north doing the same. I say this because these shits was also there in 0, aka the past. So it's not like this is one of the many canonized in-world changes like this part burning down or the park up top going through many forms. Nay, this is a time paradox change. And luckily they pleased me by making it uniform in Kiwami 1 and 2. Straight, long, horizontal roads being no more. So that's good, I guess. But then they fucked it up, as this little hobo park alcove and the network of alleyways in Sotembori ain't a thing in 2, but are a thing in 5, and therefore also 0, i.e. the past, but isn't a thing in Kiwami 2, aka the present. Whole series ruined! But yeah, Kiwami 1 can definitely replace the original. As stated, the original has a vibe all its own, and the American voice acting is funny as fuck and certainly worth experiencing at some point. But I'd say that that's better done when you're already invested into the series and just want something to play before whatever new game will be on the horizon at that time. Generally, I'd say that K1 has most of what the original had and more, and so as a way to either start the series or to continue post-Zero, it's certainly a solid option. Kiwami 2, though, I enjoyed a lot, but god damn is it a fucking hastily made mess. And given that Yakuza 2 is legit a classic in my eyes, I don't think it wholly does it justice. So you definitely can and could play it after Kiwami 1, but if you have access to a PS2 and are tolerant towards older games or can emulate easily, then I would honestly ask you to at least consider maybe going for the original 2. It has a far more consistent tone and style than K2 do, the gameplay ain't remotely as janky as 1's, and the story is rock solid. in both versions, granted, but I'd say that it's more consistent and thematically appropriate on the PS2 due to the tone and style being more consistent. But regardless, you certainly wouldn't be doing yourself a disservice just playing both Kiwamis and leaving the originals if all you want is to just make your way through the whole series. After all, I know what I'm missing, but you might not and will probably be willing to take the Kiwami quirks for what they are and maybe even treasure them as I do too. Also, I took the liberty of jumping into 3 for a bit to see how well it connects from the Kiwamis, as again, the growth that you see not only the environments and characters make, but also the gameplay over the course of the entire series is easily one of its best and uniquest traits, and well, the lighting, directing, and facial animations in cutscenes are all about on par with 0. But of course, the textures are of a lower quality, so you won't be getting those crispy pores. But it still looks pretty darn great for an early PS3 game. And hey, coming from Kiwami 2's odd-looking shit, you will be right at home with the occasional PS3 face you get subjected to. And gameplay-wise, this is the first game where the side quests started to get into proper sub-story tier. And Okinawa holds up super well as its own cool little location with a vibe all its own, even letting you do first person, just not while walking, and the combat connects decently well too. It's certainly far less janky than Kiwami 2's is, though the feel of it is a bit stiff, but it was stiff compared to the original as well. So overall, you're getting about the same experience going from Kiwami 2 to 3 as you did coming from the original. Though, regardless, I fucking love this series, and you really can't go wrong with any one entry. I can get why some hardcore Yakuza boomers scoff at the Kiwamis in terms of them being replacements, but I, for one, welcome the new blood, because I am not a jaded old bitch.